Kia ora friends, welcome back to my studio. I'm Gina, and in today's video we're going to be experimenting with some 3D printing. As you know, I bought a 3D printer a while ago, and in today's video I'm really keen to kind of see how I can take the 3D printing that I get off the machine to the next level. And I'm also keen to experiment with designing a 3D model for myself and then printing it so I can use it into my project. Take something that's already existing there in the universe or the thingiverse, and then also using UV resin to try and smooth out some of those print lines. So let's get into it. So to begin with, I jumped over onto my computer and brought up a website called Thingiverse. It has a whole lot of 3D printable files that are free to download, and I found a egg chair. So I've just brought this over into my 3D printer software, and I've just reduced it by 50%, so just reducing down the size of it, and then I am going to send it off to my printer to print. And this took a few hours to print, so this is absolutely sped up. It doesn't print that fast, and this is the final result. So it comes in 4 different parts. We've got the base, we've got the bottom of the chair, and then we've also got a little cushion as well, 3D printed cushion, so that just fits inside there. It has got a little bit of tidy up that needs to happen, so there's some supports in the middle to make sure that when it was printing that it could print the top of the egg as well. So all I need to do is just sort of snip those and remove that out, and that doesn't take too much effort to do. So once that's all removed, you can sort of see the outside has got sort of quite geometric kind of shaping to it. I'm not too worried about the inside because we're going to put some flocking on the inside. But on the outside, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend some time and I'm going to sand down all of those different shapes and ridges just to try and get it as smooth as possible. Once I'm pretty happy with the sanding part of it, I'm just going to glue the 2 pieces of the chair together just with a bit of super glue, and then I'm just going to set that aside to let it dry a little bit. And then I'm going to use some of this milli putt, and this is a 2-part epoxy putty, and so I'm just measuring out 2 parts and then mixing that together. With the gluing the bottom piece onto the chair, there is definitely a lip on it, and I really want to make sure that I've got a really nice smooth surface. So this is one way to customize a 3D printed model. Hello Loki. And all I'm doing is just sort of trying to smooth it out as best that I can, and then covering up some of the 3D printed ridges that are in the bottom of the chair as well. And then once I've got it to a sort of semi-smooth state, what I'm going to do is grab a little bit of water and actually rub my finger across the putty, and this just helps smooth it out even further. And then once I'm happy with that and how smooth I have got it, and I do a little bit across the top, I'm just going to put that aside to let that cure. It takes about 3 to 4 hours. I think I left it for just over 4 hours before I picked it back up again. So once it's fully cured and it's gone really quite hard, I'm just going to give it another really light sand just to smooth out any of those rough edges or bumps that I didn't quite get out with the water. So just giving it a really light sand over all of the surface. And then once I'm happy with it, we're going to give it a bit of spray paint. So I'm just going to use some high gloss white spray paint, and I'm just going to cover the inside of it with a bit of paper towel, and I've just got this on a stand so that I can get underneath it with the spray paint. So while that's off to the side drying, I'm going to move on to the base. Now this has got lots of little ridges in it from where the 3D printer has come across, and I'm just going to use a wee bit of UV resin and spread that out over the base just to try and smooth it out as much as possible. And this is just another little technique of how to prep the 3D printed model. So first of all, I've sanded it, used some milliput to fill in any of the grooves, and then I'm also using a bit of UV resin to, well, I'm actually experimenting with this because I've not used it before, but you know, it's is a way to try and smooth out the surface as much as possible, and then it just takes a little UV light to cure it. And then once it's cured, it's got a really nice flat surface on the base. Then I'm just going to use a chrome paint marker and just paint the bottom of the stand. So now the white paint has dried, and I can remove it from the little stand that I've got and just tidy up anything on the inside. So this is looking pretty good. So now what I can do is actually put the base onto the chair, and I'm just going to use a wee bit of super glue to do that. And there I've actually made two. So moving on to the flocking, I'm mixing up a bit of red paint and Mod Podge as a bit of a DIY mix of glue. The actual flocking is red and the inside is black, so I want to try and cover that as much as possible. We've got these 3D printed seats. I was going to do them separately, but in the end I decided to glue those in just with a bit of super glue, and then I'm just going to paint the inside of the chair in this, you know, red paint and Mod Podge mix. And then I'm going to grab some of the flocking, and I'm just going to tip it on the inside of the chair, and then I'm just going to sort of tap it around and move it around to make sure I cover all of those gluing surfaces. I have painted just that very edge of the chair, so I'm just making sure that I get that all covered as well. So they're looking really cool. I'm really happy with those. Moving on to another little 3D printed item. I found these by accident and thought I would give them a go, and I thought these would be ideal for my little bookcase because they're right in the back of the hallway upstairs, so you're not really going to see too much detail of them, but just enough to know that they are a set of books. So I'm just taking my time going through and painting these up using as many sort of colours that I would naturally assume would come from the 70s. So sort of avocado green, a little bit of yellow and brown, and I've got a little bit of blue in there as well. And then I'm just painting in the pages of the books, and this actually really does bring them to life. And now I can actually start to glue these into the bookcases that I made last video, and I'm just sort of evenly spread them out over the two bookcases. And then that's what it looks like, so I'm pretty happy with that. So I've just added a wee bit of glue, and I'm just gluing those into place, and they're just going to be up on each side of the window. So moving on to the table and chairs, I'm just redoing these because the first ones I made out of matchsticks and tin foil, and I'm wanting to 3D print these, and I'm using a program called Tinkercad, and it's in a free online software. And I've made the chair shape, and now what I'm wanting to do is actually just cut it in half so that I can lay it a little bit more flat onto the print bed, and it just allows me to print it without too many supports. Just like in the middle of the egg chair, I didn't really want too many supports under these thinner leg pieces that are just really easily broken. So in order for me to put them back together, I'm just using a little bit of super glue, and then that gives me back the shape of the chair. So again, I'm going to use my chrome paint pen, and I'm just going to paint the chairs, and I've also done the table already as well. These are going to give them quite a nice shiny painted chrome look, and I'm super happy with how these have turned out. Moving on to the actual back of the chair, I'm just cutting a piece of mat board. It's just a 1mm thick mat board, and I'm just cutting these down to size and then gluing them into place. And I'm doing one piece for the back of the chair, and then I'll also do a seat, and then that will be the chairs finished. For the table, I've also designed this in the same program and printed it off, and then I'm just going to reuse the tabletop. It's got a wee bit of white glue, but that will dry clear and basically disappear. So I'm really happy with how this one's turned out as well. Moving on to the sideboard, I made this sideboard with the same sort of process, but when I put it into the project, it was way out of scale. So what I've done is I've created a couple of a top and a couple of side pieces as well, but again out of the same program and out of the same 3D printed material. And then I'm just going to build up the rest of it with some mat board, and I'm just gluing those pieces into shape. This is 2 layers of mat board, which gives me about 2mm thick, which is the same thickness as the 3D printed part. So that's the 2 sides and the top, and now I can start gluing it all together. So I'm just going to start with the 2 side pieces, and I've just got another piece of mat board underneath just to give me enough gap, or enough overhang I should say, to add the doors in. So that's the top going on, and then these are the doors, and what I'm going to do is just use a bit of black marker to create a bit of shadow where the doors will actually meet together. This will make a whole lot of sense as I sort of glue them in, and you don't actually see a lot of this black anyway, so I'm not too worried that it's quite messy. So just gluing these into place, and it, like I said, just gives a little bit of shadow in between the doors and just helps with a little bit of definition. For the base of the sideboard, I'm just using a piece of balsa wood. It's about 3mm thick, and just painting that black, and then I'm just going to glue that onto the bottom, and then that will be the sideboard complete. So that's it all done, and as you can see with the original one, it's actually quite a lot smaller and definitely a lot more in scale. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this video. It was so much fun playing around with some 3D printing, designing, modifying, all those sorts of things. And if you've liked what you've seen, consider hitting that like button. It really does help the channel. And until next time, everyone, I'll see you then. Bye for now.